It doesn't get any better than this. You know, we're very cognizant of crying wolf in the wine business. There was an old wine merchant back in the 90s and 80s in Orange County. You know, the joke, you know, our big joke about this guy was like, "You're gonna miss it." You know, everything was, "You're gonna miss it." And some things, yes, you might miss. Or he's like, the best ever. You hear best ever all the time. Best ever, best ever, best ever, best ever. That beats on you as a customer, right? If you hear best ever 10 times a day, you're like, F it. I'm not gonna deal with best evers. No, crying wolf. So what we have to do is when we do have those moments where we want to reflect something exponentially great to you, then we have to pick and choose those moments, right? Because then they deliver more impact. And you go, Kyle and Tristan don't say that very often about something. I think I will buy some of this. And in the end, that's what we want you to do. We want you to buy, drink, and enjoy these wines. So without further ado, my desert island producer in Chateauneuf du Pape is Vieille Julienne. That's kind of a bold statement. We love Chateauneuf du Pape. We love it greatly. It's one of my favorite wines on the planet. We deal with a lot of great producers in Chateauneuf du Pape, a lot of big-time houses, a lot of great names. But boy, if you held me down and said you're going to pour boiling acid on my head, if I didn't give you an answer, I'd probably give you Jean-Paul Daumen's Vieille Julienne, La Vieille Julienne. And what a great property this is. And you know, back in the 90s, I don't know if, I mean, they knew they had something, but I don't know if the rest of the world knew just how great this property was. Because the properties in the north of Chateauneuf, outside, Chateau Beaucastel accepted, all the action was in the south. It was warmer down there, it was sunnier down there. We were getting in a position where we wanted these big, high-octane wines, we wanted powerful wines, we wanted to taste the sun in Chateauneuf. So in the 90s, you know, the whole 90s, late 80s into the 90s was built around the south side of Chateauneuf. And maybe La Croix, you know, the east side. But a lot of people didn't talk about the north side. It was much cooler in the north side. The exposure is slightly different, right? So these wines had to come into their own via, hate to harp on it, but climate change. So what happens is the south starts getting hot, and the north of Chateauneuf starts kind of coming into this pocket, right? And Vieille Julienne, along with producers like Mas de Bois-Lozone, Charvin, Beaucastel as well, Alain Jaune with Grand Veneur, a lot of these properties, these guys are in the pocket now. And the wines, even though they were compelling in the 90s and top flight, now they are the most compelling wines. Because in the north, you can have your cake and eat it too. You have great soils, but you have slightly cooler weather, giving the wines another dimension, yet still power. These are Grenache-based wines carrying 15 octane, as they should, for a great Chateauneuf du Pape. You know, I know some of you weenies out there are going to be like, I had a 78 something another, the label said 12 and a half, so Chateauneuf can be great at 12 and a half. Whatever. First of all, they could lie back then. You know, they had 1.5% fudge, maybe even more back in the 70s and 80s for label verification for alcohol content. So a lot of those wines could have been sporting 15, but they were too cheap to buy new labels, so they just put the 12 and a halves on there. Anyway, everything is in this glass. Vieille Julienne, 17th century estate, found in the 17th century, and it's a contiguous estate, one of the few rare contiguous estates in Chateauneuf du Pape. It is a single block where all these wines come from, including their Côte de Rhône, because the estate buffers up against the northern border of Chateauneuf and crosses over. So on the other side of the border, you have Clavan, which is their Côte de Rhône, which is amazing, but within the Chateauneuf border, you have several different sites, several different amazing terroirs, all on the north side, and accordingly, Jean-Paul makes 3 wines from these particular terroirs, and we're featuring 2 of them today, which these 2 wines are, I don't know, would you, the two of the top 4 or 5 wines of the 22 vintage we tasted so far? Fair to say? Fair to say for me. Yeah. I can easily say that. We have tasted some pretty high-end killer gear, bigger, pricier stuff that is as good, but I don't know if we taste any better. So 2 different cuvées here. I did open one of them today instead of both of them because we only have so much time and I'm yammering on. So this is Trois Sources, which as the name implies, 3 different sites within this contiguous block of a vineyard, with the emphasis on sandy soils, a la Chateauneufs, a la, Pignon, the wines from this little northerly eastern sector above La Croix, where all these famous sandy soil Chateauneufs come from. So he makes this cuvee from those sandy soils. All right, about 2/3 Grenache here, maybe 70% actually. I always forget. 70 Grenache, 10 Syrah, and then Senso and some other stuff, etc., etc. All from 65-plus-year-old vines, all biodynamically grown, Demeter certified, organic as the day is long. Both these wines get the same level of élevage, which is aging with native yeast fermentation, larger, older barrels for aging, and then bottling with no manipulation. It's as basic as it gets, folks. It comes down to the location, the vigneron, the growing of the fruit, and then transferring that fruit in the cleanest, most beautiful way possible into the bottle with no manipulation. Simple, right? On paper, yes. In practice, no. So, man, here's what you get. The Grenache is there, right? And it borders right on that Kirsche edge that the Southsiders have, that really rich side. But then there's this freshness, this garrigue, kind of like sweet herbal, lavender, florals, freshness that comes into play with this wine. Just leaves you reeling. It's rich, but bright, defined. Nice little peppery snap on the finish today. I don't know if it's the day, the calendar, whatever, but there's a nice little peppery snap to this one today that just makes you want to drink more of it. It is gushing over with all that wonderful Grenache fruit.
Yeah, I'll have a little one.
Yeah, I know. You treat yourself.
Yeah.
Treat yourself. It's just gushing over with all that fruit, but it's all reined in, brilliantly reined in, pure, focused, magnificent. What a gorgeous wine. So that's the Trois Sources. Les Hauts-Lieux, which we are not tasting today, is a little slightly higher elevation parcel of also 70-plus-year-old vines. And here the soils are this wonderful aggregate. You have the Safres, horrible, S-A-F-R-E-S. French probably pronounce it Safre or something like that. That's a sandstone, like a marlstone / sandstony type soil, along with quartzite pebbles and some clay. So in the Les Hauts-Lieux, you're going to get a little more oomph. That's the main thing here. The sandy soil from Trois Sources gives this more gentle, yet still powerful, by the way. This is heavy-duty Chateauneuf, but so focused and so attentive to itself. And Les Hauts-Lieux is kind of like the same, the playbook, but amplified a touch. More structure. Probably the fruit fades a little more to blue, historically, from my interpretations with this wine. But regardless, these are next-door neighbor cuvées from one of the greatest terroirs in Chateauneuf-du-Pape, in the wonderful, juicy, hedonistic, enticing 2022 vintage. 97 points from Dunnick here, 98 points from Dunnick here. Dunnick's on it. He knows how good the wines are. He gets it. He gets it, which I love. And then both the wines are very reasonably priced for what's in the bottle vis-a-vis the quality. These are two of the top Chateauneufs of the vintage coming from one single source. Not Trois Sources. Okay, no, thank you. It's open. He's so quick. He's so quick. He's so fast, yet so rambunctious. So, as he says, you know what to do. Click buy both of these. They're going to be on. Like us, and if you like what you're watching, subscribe. Cheers.